Think back for a second. When was the very last time you stayed completely silent during a conversation? And I don't just mean listening while waiting for your turn to talk. I mean a deliberate, intentional, lingering silence. It's pretty rare, right? Well, we're about to uncover why that specific kind of silence might just be a hidden superpower.
To really get why this matters, we gotta look at the number 250. You see, normal human conversation moves at absolute lightning speed. The typical gap between you speaking and someone else speaking averages just 200 to 250 milliseconds. It's practically a blink. Because we're so deeply wired to fill that void instantly, introducing any deliberate pause becomes a highly consequential event that completely shifts the dynamic of the room.
Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into the 3-second superpower, mastering the science of silence. Over the next few minutes, we're going to take that awkward void you usually rush to fill and literally turn it into your absolute most strategic tool.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll be covering the architecture of silence, the mechanics of deception, high-stakes sales, workplace dynamics, interpersonal harmony, and finally, your mastery blueprint. Let's jump right in. Starting off with Section 1, the architecture of silence, breaking the conversational code. We're looking right at the micro level of how we actually talk. It's wild, but your cultural background literally dictates how your body reacts to silence. If you're from a Western or highly individualistic culture, your tolerance for ambiguity is probably pretty low. Discomfort actually peaks right around 4 to 6.3 seconds. To us, a pause feels like anxiety, relational strain, or even rejection. But head over to East Asian or high-context cultures, and it's a totally different story. Pauses lasting up to 8.2 seconds are actively valued as signs of respect, thoughtfulness, and emotional maturity. Same exact pause, entirely different physical reaction depending on where you grew up.
Moving right along to Section 2, cognitive mechanics of deception, the heavy lifting of lying. Let's peek inside the brain and see how silence acts like a magnifying glass for the truth.
The big takeaway here is just the sheer amount of brain power it takes to lie compared to telling the truth. Telling the truth, super low cognitive load. You're just doing simple memory retrieval. But deception, that puts your brain at absolute maximum capacity. The liar is juggling so much. They have to simultaneously suppress the truth, invent a plausible story, monitor their own delivery, and try to read your reaction.
And this is exactly where your superpower kicks in. By deliberately pausing for just 3 seconds, you completely overload the liar's mental buffer. That silence creates a vacuum. They start panicking internally, asking themselves, wait, do they know I'm lying? And just to resolve the sheer anxiety of that silence, they'll usually start over-explaining, volunteering unsolicited details, or accidentally tripping up on their own facts.
So using modern investigative frameworks like the PEACE model, you can leverage Fragi's cognitive lie detection techniques yourself. Step 1, impose a cognitive load, like asking someone to tell their story in reverse chronological order. Step 2, encourage elaboration by pairing open questions with that crucial 3-second pause. And Step 3, hit them with unexpected questions about, say, the room's layout or their emotions. That completely bypasses their rehearsed scripts. You're letting the silence yield verifiable facts rather than forcing false confessions.
Let's turn up the heat a bit. Section 3, high-stakes commercial application. Silence as a sales weapon. Here's how this applies to high-pressure arenas like sales and negotiations.
MIT Sloan research actually proved that a simple pause totally changes how our brains process a deal. Usually, we're in System 1 thinking, fast, automatic, and highly competitive. But System 2 thinking? That's deliberative, slow, and focused on actually solving the problem. A 3-second pause literally interrupts those combative System 1 reactions and shifts both parties into System 2. By just zipping your lips for a moment, you stop eroding your own profit margins and actually start creating joint value.
Now, to nail this perfectly, you want to combine silence with tactical empathy, something Chris Voss talks a lot about. Your vocal modulation should look like this. For about 80% of the conversation, use a playful voice. Keep it warm, collaborative, and engaging. But for that critical 20% when you're delivering firm terms, you got to drop into that late-night DJ voice, a slow, downward inflecting tone that signals absolute authority.
So the next time you're negotiating, try leaning on these 3 anchors and let the silence do the heavy lifting. First, stating your price. Say the number cleanly, and then just stop talking. No apologizing, no filling the void. Second, responding to extreme demands. Hit them with a neutral 3 to 5 second pause. Let that crazy request just hang in the air. It signals it's unrealistic and usually prompts them to soften their stance. And third, handling objections. Pause for 3 seconds and take notes. It shows you're taking them seriously, and honestly, a lot of times they'll just keep talking and answer their own objection.
All right, moving right into Section 4, Navigating Workplace Dynamics, the Power of Withheld Input.
Taking this into the corporate meeting room, just talking indiscriminately actually hurts your professional standing. High performers intentionally withhold their input. Before you break your silence in a meeting, run it through this Wharton evaluation checklist. First, issue relevance. Does this align with our immediate goals? Next, issue readiness. Is this idea fully developed with actionable evidence? And finally, target responsiveness. Is the decision maker emotionally ready to hear this right now? It's all about making sure your input has maximum impact.
But we absolutely have to distinguish between strategic silence and dangerous silence. True employee voice comes from an activation mindset. You speak up because you know your input has a high impact. Contrast that with involuntary silence, which comes from an inhibition mindset. This usually happens in environments with low psychological safety, driven by fear, and it leads straight to severe burnout. Leaders really have to watch out for the spiral of silence, where minority opinions just stay quiet out of fear, causing massive groupthink.
On to Section 5, Harmonizing Interpersonal Relationships, Pausing the Cycle of Conflict. Let's look at how we can pause the conflict cycle in our personal lives.
Think about the last argument you had at home. In high-stress relationship conflicts, we default to defensive loops, like the classic pursuer-withdrawer dynamic. When emotions run high and you get pushed outside your window of tolerance, meaning you're just too overwhelmed to think straight, you start misreading cues as hostile. So instead of lashing out, use physical, somatic shifts to signal safety to your nervous system. Try vocal softening by lowering your pitch and volume. Ground your posture, unclench your jaw, drop your shoulders. And use diaphragmatic exhalation, making your exhales longer than your inhales to actively drop your heart rate.
Once you're physically regulated, this 4-phase plan is an amazing blueprint to navigate the argument. Phase 1 is escalation interruption. Catch the warning signs and explicitly state you need a pause. Phase 2 is a time-bound return. Give an exact timeline. Let's meet back in 15 minutes so nobody feels abandoned. Phase 3 is somatic regulation. Go to separate rooms to calm the body, and hey, do not sit there rehearsing your arguments. Finally, Phase 4 is joint savoring. Sometime later, completely outside of the conflict, pause together to plan a future experience. It's a great way to reinforce your positive bonds.
And finally, Section 6, the Mastery Blueprint, your daily practice. Let's talk about taking all this science and actually mastering it in your everyday life.
To really build this into a daily habit, you need the AHA self-regulation loop as your personal playbook. The second you detect a physical trigger, like your heart rate spiking or that desperate urge to interrupt, just run through these steps. 1. Awareness. Identify those physical warning signs. 2. Halt. Completely stop your verbal momentum and take a deep breath. And 3. Act. Wait a full, real 3 seconds before forming a crisp, deliberate response. This loop right here is the absolute key to deploying the pause effectively.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final, provocative thought to carry into your very next conversation. How will you use your next 3 seconds of silence? Are you going to use it to uncover the truth, to negotiate a better deal, or maybe to save a relationship from a destructive argument? The choice, and this incredible superpower, is entirely in your hands. Thanks for joining me, and I highly challenge you to embrace the pause today.